In this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 of my favourite communication hacks that will massively improve your communication skills when interacting with autistic people. After watching this video, I guarantee that you will think differently about the language barriers between autistic and non-autistic people. And if you're not autistic yourself, then these 10 tips will make your life easier, I promise. Hey friends, I'm Mike, a late identified autistic adult, and over the past year, I've been making videos about autism and neurodiversity. And some common themes just keep coming up. One of these themes is this strange separation that exists between autistic and non-autistic people. It's kind of like asking for chips for tea, but getting a bag of crisps. It's the same language, but totally different expectations. I remember when I first realised that I might be autistic and started looking back through the last 30 plus years, realising that nearly every conversation with an allistic, that's non-autistic, person has at least one moment of mismatched expectations in it. We should get a coffee sometime. Now that's small talk for goodbye. It doesn't mean literally taking out your diary and trying to schedule it in like it's an unmissable appointment or a special date. And that's why, if you're allistic and you're having a conversation with an autistic person, just say what you mean. You don't have to patronise autistic people like you're the presenter of a children's TV show, but if you're relying on unsaid expectation, you might just need to say it out loud so you're both on the same page. But here's the thing, it's not just about being direct with your language, but with your body language too. And if the autistic person is of a higher masking variety, they might be trying really hard to be mimicking your body language and energy. If their brain is like mine, they'll be spending a chunk of time watching your posture and a chunk of time thinking about their own posture and trying to match your energy levels. Any remaining time and energy goes into thinking about the words that you're saying and then what their response might be. Now, all of that processing might make them appear to be a bit slow, but that's because they're just a Mac running software that's been compiled for Windows. All of that non-verbal social stuff requires loads of background process tasks to run. They've got an application running that's constantly assessing their own body language and one for monitoring yours. And for some reason, there's a tab open playing music somewhere and they just don't know where it's coming from. So, tip 3, processing time. You can meet them halfway by not expecting eye contact or to be sitting or standing face to face and allowing them some processing time to think before replying. Just skip the small talk, go straight to the big talk. Of course, it totally depends on the context or the situation. It's one thing if you're a barista and you're simply taking someone's coffee order and need to be efficient versus having a deep conversation about a passionate interest or arguing about politics or something like that. What would an autistic village or an autistic island look like? Let's call it Autistica, the same name as our Minecraft creative server. And in this foreign place that we call Autistica, where the sun shines but not too much and the trains run to time and unsolicited telephone calls and knocks on the door are outlawed, communication won't just be about speaking and eye contact. It's going to bring me to my next point, which is non-verbal communication. Now, not every autistic person can speak verbally. My communication skills come from being self-employed for over 20 years as a software engineer. I mean, you say unemployed, I say self-employed. You say can't hold down a full-time position, I say contractor and consultant. Anyway, I've practiced my communication skills a lot and it's something that I keep trying to improve because the Mike AF character creation sheet, I put 0 points into communication skills when I was a newborn character. And now I have to make up for it. I use magical items like editing, which gives me a +10 to communication, and I literally script what I want to say so that I don't miss anything, and I do that in advance and put my notes just over here so I can see my notes and I don't go off script too much. But for autistic people who cannot verbalise, who are non-speaking, and by the way, this is much better than saying a non-verbal, since many people who don't speak aren't not speaking because they have no intelligence or no inner monologue that non-verbal implies. Those who are non-speaking may not be able to have the same opportunities to practice verbal communication skills like I've had. They might have to use sign language or assistive technology like tablets or speech generating devices. Or they might write. The key is to be patient and let them communicate in whatever way works best for them. Don't assume that because someone doesn't speak that they have nothing to say or that they're incapable of sharing thoughts. So look, how do you practically hang out with an autistic person who either isn't speaking or struggles with their communication, or for that matter, any autistic person. Let's go to a fictional island again. Let me introduce you to the country of Frankony. In Frankony, their work culture means that if you have a meeting, or say a job interview, you have to walk into the room and do a little bow. Then you walk slowly to the other person, you lick your fingers and then extend them to the other person to hold, which they have to hold, but only for 2 to 3 seconds, because anything longer than that would be weird. And then one of you says, "What did you get up to at the weekend?" And then the other person is obligated to respond, but for more than 2 seconds, but less than 10 seconds. And then the other person has to laugh, or say something sad happened, like it was a funeral or something, you say, "Oh dear." Then you both sit down while staring at each other like some choreographed dancers in perfect synchronicity. And if you don't do these things, you're considered to be a fucking weirdo and won't get hired or get that hot date. Of course, I am actually joking about Frankony, but this is how every country I've ever visited feels to me, full of strange customs. Back in the late 90s Japan, there was an autistic 13-year-old boy called Naoki Higashida. Now, Naoki is non-speaking, but when he was just 13 years old, he did write this book called The Reason I Jump, which explains what it's like to be autistic and non-speaking. And he learned to write by pointing to letters on a special board, and with the help of his mum and a helper at school, he later developed his typing skills. In the section, "Why don't you make eye contact when you're talking?" True, we don't look at people's eyes very much. Look, whoever you're talking with properly in the eye, I've been told, again and again and again, but I still can't do it. To me, making eye contact with someone I'm talking to feels a bit creepy, so I tend to avoid it. Where exactly am I looking? You might well suppose that we're just looking down or at the general background, but you'd be wrong. What we're actually looking at is the other person's voice. Voices may not be visible things, but we're trying to listen to the other person with all of our sense organs. When we're fully focused on working out what the heck it is you're saying, our sense of sight sorts of zones out. If you can't make out what it is you're seeing, it's the same as not seeing anything at all. What's bothered me for a long time is this idea people have that so long as we're keeping eye contact while they're talking to us, that alone means we're taking in every word. Ha! If only that was all it took, my disability would have been cured a long, long time ago. Thanks, Naoki, and his book, The Reason I Jump, will be on an upcoming episode of our online book club, Tea and Tales, and there is an affiliate link in the description below for anyone who wants to purchase a copy now. That feeling of being distracted by insistence on certain cultural norms, like how you're supposed to hold your body and only move in allowed prescribed motions at prescribed times, can make socializing feel difficult for autistic people. So if you want to be a great friend, tip 6, don't give a shit. Then don't care. A very good friend of mine who I see a few times a year shares my passion for renewable energy and electric vehicles. I had just returned from a trip to visit a large renewable energy company, and I was telling him all about it. It was in the evening, we were in a car park, and I was pacing the outline of an empty car park space while recalling the story. The thing is, other than a remark about being hard to follow me, and I have also heard this when I've spoken on stage, I do tend to move around a bit, I guess, like an American preacher would. I mean, use that space, or why else is it there? Why not go for a walk or an activity with your autistic friend or colleague? If it's a work meeting, why not have the meeting while walking on a brief walk around a block or a quiet park? It helps me to think. I would have gotten better exam grades if only I was allowed to walk while answering my exam questions. Why on earth did they make us sit on those uncomfortable chairs in a large, smelly, echoey school hall? Like the same place you do assemblies and sports. It's weird. And most of the exam tables wobbled and had to be supported with crunched up bits of paper, and you'd like crunch a bit of paper and stuff it under one of the legs, and you'd have to work while being stared at as well. It's kind of, yeah. Tip 7, if you're autistic, you'll know this, but the psychology literature is only in the last 10 or so years coming to the realization that neurotypicals, in general, are much less likely to want to interact or spend time with an autistic peer instead of a neurotypical one. Now, this study is interesting because it asks participants, both autistic and allistic, to be filmed for 10 seconds. Researchers then asked people if they would like to live near, hang out, sit next to, or talk to this person, and whether you thought that they were awkward, attractive, trustworthy, dominant, likable, or smart. Newsflash, the autistic group rated significantly less favourable on every item, except live near, trustworthy, and smart. I guess we aren't the burgling or house party types. So de facto accountants then. But the thing is, autistic people are not broken neurotypicals. You might be forgiven for thinking this when you take a look at the diagnostic criteria. Now, I made a video deep diving into the DSM-5 text revision diagnostic criteria for autism last month, which is worth a watch after this video. You might think that as autism is clinically defined by social communication deficits, that it might be expected that information transfer between us is deficient. And this is primarily what the psych literature pre-2012 thinks. A study by Edinburgh University in 2020 called Autistic Peer-to-Peer Information Transfer is Highly Effective, spoiler alert, they effectively probed the double empathy problem. They demonstrated that autistic people sharing knowledge with each other in a chain, something like the game of Chinese whispers that I used to play as a child, is no worse than a neurotypical chain. And sometimes it's even more effective and accurate. These chains had 8 people in them. And when you mixed 4 autistic and 4 non-autistic people in one chain, it did much worse than chains of the same neurotype. So you're thinking, if I'm not autistic, I shouldn't even bother or try to communicate or socialise with my autistic partner, friend, colleague or rando in a bar somewhere. Well, in the 2021 study, Anything But the Phone, Communication Mode Preferences in the Autism Community, the preferred communication modes from face-to-face phone call, letter, email, text or instant messenger were compared across a variety of contexts. That's customer services, friends, family, research programs, education, employment and accessing services. The study concluded, when contacting unknown people or organisations, we found that generally email was preferred and phone calls were very unpopular. However, for friends, family and people they felt comfortable with, they preferred both face-to-face and written forms of communication, e.g. email and text message. Basically, if you aren't besties or the autistic person hasn't opted into the communication with a hell yes, then leave it in an email or text message. That's the hack. I emailed a query that I had overpaid my tax to the government and need a rebate. They didn't reply for weeks, until one random afternoon recently where I had a phone call, just an unexpected phone call from an unknown number, and they left a voicemail. And they left it in that tone of, you didn't answer your phone, that's a problem, it's a burden for me. I tried calling, but there was no answer, one of that sort of passive aggressive nonsense. Yeah, I know, because I'll send you an email and then at some random point in the random future, like the courier from Skyrim, you're just going to arrive one day and take all of my attention. Yeah. Just email me back. The thing is, don't phone me, it's rude. An unexpected phone call says, what I have to say is more important than what you are doing. And if I'm working, it can take me a long time to get back to what I was doing, if I manage to recover at all. And from a work context, I need my notes in front of me. If somebody's calling me with a work or a technical issue, even if it's as simple as responding to my email with a phone call, the caller has prepared before making the call and has all the information that they need in front of them, and I don't. I made a video about phone calls and it's got my good friend Quinn in it from Autismatic. The video is in the description below. So, life hack time, what do you need to do? Are you best buds with the autistic person and are they expecting your call? Well, go right ahead. Is it an emergency that affects them? Give them a call and give them some extra time to think. Don't, whatever you do, try to use this as a way to get them to commit to something. Hey buddy, what are you doing at the weekend? Are you free? Etc. Send a text or an email instead. Texts and email or instant messenger are fantastic. I can reply from the bath. Sometimes I do reply to people from the bath on my terms, and you'll never know. But, tip 8, respect monotropic attention. Monotropic attention, which is a theory of autism that explains many of the characteristics of autism without being entirely deficit-based, says that autistic people allocate their attention differently to allistic or non-autistic people. And that's what autism is. And this isn't a preference, it's an innate way that our attention works. Interrupting them might look like it's just a bit inconvenient, but it could cause intense distress and frustration. It's my daily battle, this. On one side, you could say my superpower, my hyperfocus allows me to be insanely productive and get a lot of work done. But the downside to this is that the superpower is really fickle. It's fragile AF. When I'm pulled out of a flow state, it can cause such intense frustration. It's like somebody's walked up behind me quietly and slapped me with a slimy cold fish. It's a jolt. It takes a while for the adrenaline spike to drop afterwards. How do I manage it? Well, I suppress all my notifications except for certain times. I'll make a video about this, maybe one of those day in the life types of videos. If you want to see that sort of thing, let me know. So I'm not like going completely off base here, but let me know in the comments below. But if you send me a message or an email or whatever, I might not get it, but I will get around to it. Probably the best way to reach me actually is to tag me on the Scratch and Post Discord server, honestly. But the life hack here is to be mindful of this monotropic focus. If you need an autistic person's attention, wait for a natural pause or ask if it's a good time to talk. If you don't respect their flow, which is honestly how autistic people thrive, it sends a not so subtle message that you really don't like them. And for employment, it's actually one of my formal reasonable accommodations, should I need to request it. Accommodation builds trust, doesn't break it. Talking about it. Accommodations. Tip 9, accommodate, accommodate, accommodate. When I was 21 and just finishing my computer science degree, I was given a job offer. My final exam ended and I went straight from the exam hall to my new workplace, same day. It's why in my graduation photos, I'm dressed differently from the rest of my class. I was a junior developer for a legal services software vendor. I had a horrible line manager. He singled me out to sit in the middle of an open plan office, like right in the middle, right where everyone's like walking through, like right in the middle. It's kind of a weird place to sit, to be fair. And I now realise, as a late identified autistic person, why I hated this environment so much. And everyone sat in silence, and this was pre-iPod days, right? Like, you couldn't easily listen to music while working. So we worked like quiet little librarians. My job was to work down the QA bug reports and fix them. At least a few times a day, my line manager would creep up behind me and slam his hand down on my desk, making me jump. I actually feel a bit sick even recalling it. And what was this, like over 20 years ago? I was a different person then, still an autistic one, but it didn't dawn on me at the time that this was workplace bullying. My line manager sat next to a customer services guy and they were both behind me and spent their day whispering to each other quietly. It was awful. I was made redundant, along with half the company, in the week just before Christmas. I'd just gotten married and not long rented a 2-bedroom flat in town, in an apartment block that had just been built. The paint was still fresh. And now I couldn't pay for it. So I went freelance, which has brought its own struggles, but my last full-time employment was more than half my lifetime ago now. And it's a struggle. It's definitely harder, but at this point, it's allowed me to accommodate myself. My psychologist was impressed. It's the environment that matters. Better get back to my notes. So the lesson then, the life hack, accommodations, they're not just about making someone feel special. They're not privileges for a snowflake generation. They're nothing like that. In fact, if anything, the opposite. I don't know any autistic person that wants to be seen publicly, to be singled out and perceived. Right, excuse me everyone. Nancy is going to be wearing noise cancelling headphones, and if you wouldn't mind not phoning her, just sending her an email, that'd be lovely. Thank you everybody. Thank you everybody. Everybody, this one's different. Yeah, it's not like that. Accommodations are about ensuring equal footing in the environment and in communication. If somebody prefers email to phone calls, writes instead of speaks, or just needs that quieter setting, lean into it. Send an agenda for all meetings beforehand. And better yet, make it a draft agenda and solicit their input. Lean into that preference. After all, accommodations, like the ability to have some flexibility in workload and planning tasks and wearing noise cancelling headphones, listening to a podcast or a YouTube video maybe, listening to something like that while working, these aren't asking for that elusive corner office with your own personal assistant to get you lunch and drive you around and answer all your phone calls. It's just about offering an accommodation. And outside of work, it's true of families too. Don't bum people out just because they didn't confirm your Christmas dinner or Boxing Day picnic plans. Just let people be, whether they're autistic or not. I'm thinking of making a video about this. It's actually on my mind at the moment. So stay subbed if you want to see it. It's probably coming. Tip 10. The thing is, all of this deficit talk about autism, no matter where you look, is downright depressing. Imagine if this conversation was about being black or French or the deficits of female anatomy when having a stand-up outdoor wee. It's just daft. It's utterly, totally bonkers. We did, however, used to talk like this. Old newspapers are fun if you ever get to read them. Go to the 1950s and have a little read. It's something else. The culture and the psychological literature was something else back then. A drama about Hans Asperger, yeah, being potentially affiliated with the Nazi party. His writing wasn't the worst. I'd say the next few decades. There's some really good writing in there, which I talked about on other videos on this channel. Being autistic, though, is being different. It's not being quirky or making videos for attention and clout. That's actually been thrown at me quite a few times this year. I'm 43, I think. Yeah, 43. Oh dear. I don't need any attention or clout in my life, thanks. If it means It just means if you're autistic, you have a different thinking and sensory process to the majority. That doesn't mean that you're totally different and you'll never fit in and nobody will understand you though. There's one thing I've noticed in our community here, not just in our Discord, but also in the live streams and in the YouTube comments. It's quite interesting how many of our experiences are similar or, damn it, word for word identical with each other. And that's why I celebrate being autistic, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't be me. I'd probably be going to a football match or something. Anyway, see you soon. Bye.